Kaspersky Endpoint Security Cloud provides all essential technologies needed to protect and administer not-so-big infrastructures. Full-fledged protection against threats for Windows and macOS workstations and servers. Protection for Android devices. Anti-malware. Protection from phishing. Factory reset. Protection for iOS devices. Factory reset. Remote wipe. Protection for Office 365. Malware protection. Quarantine. Protection against mail exploits and ghost spoofing. Data discovery. Kaspersky Endpoint Security Cloud is available in 3 versions. Kaspersky Endpoint Security Cloud, Kaspersky Endpoint Security Cloud Plus and Kaspersky Endpoint Security Cloud Pro. They differ in the set of included components. Kaspersky Endpoint Security Cloud ensures fundamental protection. Kaspersky Endpoint Security Cloud Plus features extended security management and controls, and Kaspersky Endpoint Security Cloud Pro additionally provides incident investigation and response components, as well as information security training. Let's start with the Kaspersky Endpoint Security for Windows application. It protects devices against threats and helps control users' actions. The protection components are most numerous. They provide the following functionality: virus scanning, file threat protection, mail threat protection, web threat protection. File threat protection constantly monitors files opened on the device and scans them for malware prior to allowing the user to access them. This is the most important protection component, because it blocks most malware. Never disable it. Mail threat protection scans email messages and checks for malicious attachments on the fly. If mail threat protection is disabled, an attachment will be scanned by file threat protection when the user tries to open it. However, it is easier to delete a malicious file before it is saved to disk. Besides, on-the-fly scanning consumes fewer resources. Web threat protection intercepts web traffic and scans downloaded files for malware. Does not allow the user to open phishing websites or websites that spread malware. Disabling web threat protection makes the user vulnerable to phishing attacks. System scanning does not intercept anything. It runs on schedule and thoroughly scans files on the hard drive. Some components of Kaspersky Endpoint Security for Windows do not search for malware. Instead, they help defend devices by reducing attack opportunities. Malicious files can get into the system in various ways. The user can download them from a suspicious site, receive them via email, copy them from an infected removable drive, and so on. To make matters worse, some malicious programs actively look for ways to get on a device. They try to propagate throughout the network or exploit a vulnerability to gain access to various resources. A firewall can block unnecessary connections. This is another popular method of dealing with attack opportunities. A laptop or workstation rarely needs to accept inbound connections. Usually it establishes outbound connections to websites, local servers, mail servers, and so on. A firewall prevents active network attacks by restricting incoming connections to the computer. The firewall in Kaspersky Endpoint Security for Windows includes preset rules that block potentially dangerous connections, especially inbound connections from the internet. The Network Threat Protection component complements the firewall. Network Threat Protection analyzes information received over the network and compares it with signatures of known network attacks. If a match is detected, the connection is blocked. We can group Kaspersky Endpoint Security components as follows: components responsible for static protection, components responsible for dynamic protection, and additional components. File, mail, and web threat protection pertain to static protection. They scan objects before they are launched and prevent the downloading of dangerous objects. Behavior detection, exploit prevention, remediation engine, and intrusion prevention play the main role here. The control components in the firewall also play their part. It is crucial to detect malicious objects. To solve this task, the behavior detection component monitors all software activities and compares them with dangerous behavior patterns. It controls file access operations, network connections, and system calls. Intrusion prevention categorizes applications into groups according to their trust level: trusted, low restricted, high restricted, and untrusted. Kaspersky Endpoint Security assigns a trust category to each application when it is launched for the first time. The main categorization tool is Kaspersky Security Network. Intrusion prevention restricts each application's interactions with other software depending on its trust category. Exploit prevention protects against various attacks when adversaries exploit vulnerable software to obtain administrator privileges or conceal the execution of malicious code. Exploit prevention controls application launch operations, and when a vulnerable application starts another application without an explicit user command, the launch is blocked. Remediation engine rolls back actions performed by malware detected by file threat protection, virus scan, and behavior detection. Any changes to the file system, creating, moving, or renaming files or registry values, creating registry entries, will be cancelled. The database that contains malware descriptions helps detect most malicious files. When scanning objects for malicious code, Kaspersky Endpoint Security checks whether the database contains similar descriptions. When a new malicious object appears, Kaspersky adds a new description to the database. To ensure reliable protection, the most recent version of the database must be available on the device. A special update module is responsible for this. It automatically checks for updates and downloads the very latest data to the device. To be assured of protection, update the database regularly. It is also important to allow Kaspersky Endpoint Security to use the Kaspersky Security Network. Kaspersky Security Network, KSN, is a cloud technology that improves accuracy of decisions made by the protection components. Kaspersky Security Network receives information about files from protected devices, analyzes it using machine learning, takes into account when a file was first detected, whether it is widespread and in which regions, whether it is signed with a certificate, what certificate, and so on. Kaspersky experts also analyze numerous suspicious files. After the analysis, each file is placed into one of the trust groups that we mentioned earlier. For each trust group, Kaspersky analysts have developed scenarios: what a file is allowed to do and what is forbidden, depending on the group's reputation. File encrypting ransomware is Trojan malware that encrypts files on the computer and demands a ransom for their decryption. File encrypting ransomware gets on a device through email messages and websites. When you open a questionable attachment or click an infected banner. To allay suspicions, adversaries often forge messages from banks and tax organizations. As soon as encrypting ransomware gets on the computer, it connects to its command and control server and sometimes requests an encryption key from it. Then the ransomware encrypts files in local and network folders and deletes the originals along with the encryption key. As a result, only the attackers have a copy of the key. When encryption is completed, the ransomware displays a message demanding the user pay a ransom in cryptocurrency for decryption. Kaspersky Endpoint Security Cloud protects against encrypting ransomware at all stages of an attack. It intercepts infected messages and links to sites that distribute malware, prohibits saving of malicious objects to the drive, prevents questionable applications from accessing files, does not allow the user to run suspicious files. Kaspersky Endpoint Security Cloud features two control components: device control and web control. Device control restricts the connection of certain devices, such as removable drives, modems, or printers, to the computer. Device control reduces the risk of not only infections, but also data leakage. If it is forbidden to connect drives and printers to the computer, then it will be impossible to copy or print sensitive data. Web control can be compared to parental control in the business context. Web control can prohibit users from visiting social networks, job sites, the sites of arms or drug dealers, and viewing adult content. You can also prohibit the downloading of audio, video, and executable files from the internet. In addition to reducing the chances of infection, this component increases work efficiency by preventing distractions. Kaspersky Endpoint Security Cloud allows you to enforce encryption on managed Windows and macOS devices. Encryption prevents unauthorized access to data stored on the device. Windows devices are encrypted using BitLocker. This is a Microsoft Windows security and encryption feature. When managed via Kaspersky Endpoint Security, BitLocker encrypts all logical partitions. Recovery keys are stored in the Kaspersky Endpoint Security Cloud infrastructure. Encryption management is available starting with Kaspersky Endpoint Security Cloud Plus. You can use Kaspersky Endpoint Security Cloud to install software updates that fix vulnerabilities found on protected Windows devices. Update management is also available starting with Kaspersky Endpoint Security Cloud Plus. Kaspersky Endpoint Security for Mac differs from Kaspersky Endpoint Security for Windows. macOS is considered to be a more secure system and fewer components are used, namely, virus scanning, file threat protection, web threat protection, network threat protection, file vault encryption. In addition to anti-malware scanning, which requires updates, online Kaspersky security network checks are used on macOS. But there are no control components, or behavior detection, or firewall, or mail threat protection. Devices running macOS are encrypted using the file vault encryption technology. When the administrator enables file vault encryption, Kaspersky Endpoint Security prompts the user for his or her credentials. Encryption will begin only after the user enters the credentials and the device restarts. Recovery keys are stored in the Kaspersky Endpoint Security Cloud infrastructure. Encryption management is available starting with Kaspersky Endpoint Security Cloud Plus. If an application can be installed on a device, then malware can be installed too. Additionally, if a device can be connected to the internet, then the user may visit a phishing site. In this sense, mobile devices are similar to workstations and should be protected in a similar way. When manufacturers improve the performance of tablets and smartphones, on the one hand, they enhance capabilities enabling users to work with mail, MS Office files, and so on, but on the other hand, they attract the attention of malware creators, since these resources can also be used to launch malicious programs. Mobile devices are handy for web surfing. Therefore, they need to be protected from phishing attacks. A mobile device can be lost or stolen, so it is important that the security app can enforce stricter user authentication to prevent unauthorized access, as well as provide tools that will help find the device if it is lost. Mobile devices are less powerful than workstations, so real-time protection and on-demand scanning just cannot be as thorough as on workstations. On the other hand, there are significantly less malware for mobile platforms than for computers. If a mobile device is lost, the most desperate measure is to remotely wipe data from it. In this case, even if someone gains access to the device, data will not be leaked. Yes, there may be significantly fewer threats for mobile devices than for Windows, but still enough to worry about. An infected phone can send spam messages not only to email contacts, but also to the phonebook contacts. When considering a smartphone from the perspective of corporate security, the most valuable asset is sensitive data. Attackers are likely to be interested in compromised data. Kaspersky Endpoint Security for Mobile is installed on mobile platforms. This is a counterpart of Kaspersky Endpoint Security for Windows designed for mobile platforms. Different applications are installed on different operating systems. Mobile device management for iOS, Kaspersky Endpoint Security Mobile for Android. Android does not prohibit access to the device's file system, and it can even be used as a removable drive, but with some restrictions. All Android applications run in an isolated environment and system files have read-only access. However, users can gain root privileges in the operating system, which will give them unlimited administrator permissions, including modification of system files and access to all data of all installed applications. Kaspersky Endpoint Security for Mobile cannot prevent this, but can detect rooting, notify the administrator, and perform a preconfigured action. For example, lock the device or automatically wipe corporate data. Microsoft Office 365 has some basic built-in protection that provides a minimal level of security, but this is not enough to feel safe. Kaspersky Security for Microsoft Office 365 offers advanced protection against phishing, ransomware, spam, and business email compromise. Kaspersky Security for Microsoft Office 365 features components similar to those of Kaspersky Endpoint Security, but designed for the Office 365 cloud infrastructure. Exchange Online Protection can detect malicious files in attachments and phishing attacks on the fly. The OneDrive and SharePoint Online components scan files for malicious code and delete them by default. Microsoft Teams Protection scans transferred files for malicious code. As well as having the same components as Kaspersky Endpoint Security, Kaspersky Security for Microsoft Office 365 also has data discovery. This component ensures that any confidential data sent through or stored in Exchange Online mailboxes, OneDrive repositories, and SharePoint sites do not leak. By default, all detected sensitive data is quarantined, and the administrator can take measures to prevent any leakage.